He was dying in the snow when her song made him remember what it meant to live. The forest held its breath. Snow fell in silence, thick and relentless, burying the blood trail that stretched between the pines. Elara knelt beside the massive wolf, her hands trembling not from cold, but from recognition. She had been cast out 3 days prior, left to freeze for the crime of being different, for carrying no scent, for existing outside the natural order her pack demanded. Now, beneath the full moon's silver gaze, she found him. The wolf's fur was midnight black, matted with crimson. His breathing came in shallow, ragged bursts. One amber eye opened, fixing on her with an intensity that should have sent her running. Instead, she reached out, her fingertips brushing the space between his ears. "I know you," she whispered, though she had never seen him before. "I know what it is to be alone." The wolf's eye closed. His heartbeat slowed. Without thought, without plan, Elara began to sing. The melody came from somewhere ancient, somewhere she didn't recognize. A song her mother had hummed before the fever took her. A song that tasted of moonlight and sorrow and hope that refused to die. The words were not in any language she'd been taught. They simply were. And the wolf's breathing steadied. His wounds didn't close, but the bleeding slowed. The frantic flutter of his pulse found rhythm. When she finished, silence returned to the forest, but it was different now, expectant rather than empty. The wolf opened both eyes. They were no longer merely amber. They held galaxies. Then he began to shift. Elara scrambled backward, her song dying in her throat. The transformation was agonizing to witness, bones cracking, reforming, muscle and sinew rearranging beneath skin that rippled like water. Where the wolf had lain, a man now knelt in the snow, naked and bleeding, his dark hair falling across a face carved from suffering and nobility in equal measure. He looked at her with those same amber eyes. "Who are you?" His voice was raw, broken glass wrapped in velvet. "What are you?" "I'm no one," Elara said, pulling her tattered cloak tighter. "I'm the one they threw away." "Your song." He touched his chest where the deepest wound should have killed him. It still bled, but not as before. "That song shouldn't exist. It's from the old times, before the packs, before the bloodlines. I don't know what it is. I couldn't let you die." He studied her face as snow collected on his shoulders. "You have no scent. You're a ghost to our kind. That's why they exiled me. I'm broken. No." The word came swift and certain. "You're hidden. There's a difference." A howl pierced the night, distant but drawing closer. The man's entire body tensed. He tried to stand, swayed, and Elara caught him before he fell. His skin burned against hers despite the cold. "They're hunting me," he said. "My brother, his loyalists, they won't stop until I'm dead." "Then we run. You don't understand. I don't care what you are." Elara's voice surprised her with its strength. "You're hurt. You need shelter. There's a cave 1/2 mile north. I've been staying there." The howls multiplied. Closer now. The man looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something she hadn't expected. Gratitude mixed with despair. "If they find you with me, they'll kill you too." "They already tried to kill me. I'm still here." She pulled his arm across her shoulders, taking more of his weight than should have been possible for someone her size. Perhaps it was adrenaline. Perhaps it was something else. Something that thrummed beneath her skin when their bodies touched. Something that made the moonlight seem brighter, warmer. They moved through the forest like shadows, leaving a trail the snow was already covering. Behind them, the howls grew frustrated, confused. The man's blood had stopped flowing entirely now, though she didn't understand how. The cave appeared like a blessing, a dark mouth in the hillside, narrow enough to defend, deep enough to hide. Elara had lined it with pine branches and stolen furs from her old pack's territory. A small fire pit held cold ashes. She lowered the man onto the makeshift bed, then moved to block the entrance with branches and snow, creating the illusion of a sealed passage. When she turned back, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're protecting me," he said quietly. "You don't even know my name." "Does it matter?" "Yes." He closed his eyes. "Because names have power, and mine carries a crown I no longer deserve to wear." Ilara knelt beside him, close enough to feel his fever heat radiating. "Then tell me when you're ready. For now, just rest." "I'm Kieran." The confession came like a prayer. "Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and I've just dragged you into a war you didn't choose." The fire pit remained cold. The moon watched through the cave opening. And somewhere in the darkness, wolves circled, searching for their fallen king. Ilara took his hand. It engulfed hers completely. "Then I guess," she whispered, "we'll survive it together." His fingers tightened around hers, and for the first time since her exile began, she didn't feel like a ghost. She felt seen. Morning came gray and hesitant. Ilara woke to find Kieran still unconscious, his breathing deep and steady. The wounds across his torso had closed during the night, not healed completely, but no longer life-threatening. Silver scars traced patterns across his ribs like a map of violence survived. She slipped from the cave into the pearl-light dawn. Fresh snow had erased their tracks completely. The forest stood silent, watching. No wolves, no hunters. Only the whisper of wind through pine needles and her own visible breath. When she returned with an armful of dry wood and a hare caught in one of her snares, Kieran was sitting upright, his back against the cave wall. He'd wrapped himself in the largest fur, though it barely covered him. "You shouldn't have gone out," he said. His voice was stronger now, edged with authority that made her spine straighten involuntarily. "You need to eat." She began building the fire, striking flint against stone. "And I'm still breathing, so I made the right choice." "They could have found you." "They didn't." Sparks caught on dried moss. Flames grew. Kieran watched her work with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She'd grown accustomed to being invisible in her old pack, the Omega with no scent, the girl who registered as absence rather than presence. His attention felt like standing too close to fire. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. 3 days, 4, counting last night." "And before that?" Ilara focused on skinning the hare. "I was with the Silver Ridge Pack, until they decided I was an abomination." "An Omega with no scent." Kieran shifted, wincing slightly. "That's not an abomination. It's a gift the goddess stopped giving centuries ago." "Doesn't feel like a gift when your own mother can't recognize you. When you walk through a room and everyone forgets you were there. Or," he said quietly, "when you need to disappear, you can." She looked up. He was studying her with those amber eyes that seemed to see through flesh to something deeper. "Your song," he continued. "Do you know what it did? Helped you heal? More than that. It called to something ancient in my blood, something that's been dormant since my father died." He paused. "We used to have pathfinders, Omegas blessed by the moon goddess to guide lost alphas back to their purpose. They could sing the old language, read destiny in starlight. My grandmother was one, but she died before I was born. The gift vanished with her bloodline." "I'm not blessed." Ilara returned to preparing the meat. "I'm cursed. What if they're the same thing?" The question hung between them as the hare cooked over flames. Outside, a raven called, 3 sharp cries that made Kieran tense. "What is it?" "A signal." He stood, moving with surprising steadiness to peer through the cave opening. "My scouts use ravens, but so does my brother." "The one hunting you?" "Marcus. He wasn't always cruel, but power does things to wolves, especially when they believe it was stolen from them." Kieran's jaw tightened. "Our father chose me as heir. Marcus never forgave that choice. 3 months ago, he challenged me during the blood moon. I should have killed him. Instead, I showed mercy. And he used it against you. He poisoned half my guard, turned my most trusted general. By the time I realized, I was fighting for my life in my own throne room. His hand moved unconsciously to the worst of his scars, a jagged line across his ribs. I barely made it to the border forest. They've been hunting me for 2 weeks. Alara turned the spit, watching fat drip into flames. Why mercy, if you knew he wanted you dead? Because he's my brother. Because our mother begged me with her dying breath to protect him. Because... He exhaled slowly. Because I believed love could conquer ambition. You were wrong. Yes. She pulled the meat from the fire, divided it, and handed him the larger portion. Their fingers brushed. That same electric current jumped between them, stronger now, almost visible in the firelight. Kieran noticed it too. His eyes widened slightly. You feel that, he said. It wasn't a question. I don't know what it is. I do. He set the food aside, untouched. It's a bond forming, not the mate bond. That's instant and involuntary. This is something older, a soul recognition. Pathfinders were chosen by wounded kings. The bond allowed them to heal more than flesh. I'm not a pathfinder. I can't even control when the song comes. Maybe that's exactly what makes you one. The old stories say the goddess doesn't give gifts to those who seek them, only to those who need them. Another raven cry, then 2 more. Kieran moved to the cave entrance, every muscle coiled. They're closing the search grid. We have maybe an hour before they reach this hillside. Alara joined him, scanning the forest. There's an old smuggler's trail, goes through the ravine to the abandoned territory. No pack has claimed it in years. Why? They say it's cursed, that wolves who enter never leave. Kieran looked at her, and despite everything, despite the danger, the wounds, the impossible situation, he smiled. It transformed his face completely, chasing away the shadow of kingship and revealing the man beneath. Then it's perfect, because right now, I'd rather face ghosts than my brother. They ate quickly, gathering supplies in silence. Alara bundled the furs while Kieran dressed in clothes she'd stolen during her exile. They fit poorly, but would have to do. When they were ready, he paused at the cave mouth. Before we go, he said, I need to know, why did you help me? She met his gaze. Because when I sang to you, you didn't look at me like I was nothing. You looked at me like I was the answer. You are. The certainty in his voice made her chest ache. I just don't know the question yet. They slipped into the forest as the sun broke through clouds. Behind them, wolves began to howl, closer now, spreading through the trees like wildfire. Alara led them toward the ravine, toward the cursed lands, toward whatever fate waited in the forgotten places between territories. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments of the night they find you. The ravine cut through earth like a wound that never healed. Alara and Kieran descended through mist so thick it felt solid, each step requiring faith that ground existed below. The temperature dropped with every footfall. Ice crystallized on bare branches, turning the forest skeletal. The stories about this place, Alara said, her voice swallowed by fog. They say the goddess herself walked here during the first winter, that she wept for the wolves who forgot mercy. And her tears cursed the land, or blessed it, depends who's telling. Kieran moved beside her with surprising grace for someone recently near death. The bond between them had strengthened. She could feel his heartbeat as if it echoed in her own chest. When he stumbled on loose rock, she caught him before he consciously reached out. That's new, he murmured. What is? knowing where you are without looking, feeling your presence like you're part of my skin now. She didn't tell him she felt it too, that his pain registered in her bones, that when his guard dropped and sadness flooded him, it tasted like iron on her tongue. The ravine floor leveled into a valley. Ancient stones jutted from earth, not random, but arranged in patterns, circles within circles. At the center stood ruins of what might have been a temple. Columns carved with wolves and moons still reached toward sky, though the roof had collapsed centuries ago. "We should keep moving," Kieran said, but he didn't move. "You recognize this place. My grandmother used to tell stories about the Temple of First Songs, where pathfinders trained before the gift died out." He walked toward the ruins as if pulled by invisible rope. "She said the goddess still listened here, that prayers spoken in moonlight were always answered." Alara followed him through scattered stones. Moss covered everything, but beneath the green she glimpsed carvings. Wolves in various poses, bowing, howling, running, dying, rising, and above them all, a woman with arms raised to a crescent moon. "The mother of wolves," Kieran whispered. He knelt before the central stone, brushing away centuries of debris. Beneath, letters emerged in a language that shouldn't have been readable, but somehow was. She read aloud, "Let those who are broken find shelter. Let those who are hunted find sanctuary. Let those who have lost their song remember the melody." The words resonated in her chest. The bond with Kieran flared, sending heat through her entire body. She gasped, stumbling backward. He was there instantly, catching her. "What happened?" "I don't know." The words, they felt alive. "Because they are." A new voice echoed through the ruins. "And you, child, just activated a sanctuary older than any living pack." They spun. An elderly woman stood at the edge of the temple, leaning on a staff carved from white wood. Her hair fell silver past her waist. Her eyes held the pale blue of glacial ice, and when she smiled, Alara saw the gap where canine teeth should have been. "You're not a wolf," Kieran said, positioning himself between the woman and Alara. "Not anymore." The woman approached without fear. "I gave up my beast to stay here, to guard this place until the goddess sent what she promised, an alpha king broken by betrayal, and a pathfinder who doesn't know her own power." She studied them both. "You're right on time, though she always did have a flair for dramatic timing. Who are you?" Alara stepped around Kieran, ignoring his protective instinct. "I was called Thorn once, guardian of the temple, keeper of songs. Now I'm just an old woman who talks to ghosts and waits for miracles." She gestured toward the ruins. "Come, you're safe here. The curse blessing prevents any wolf with violent intent from crossing the threshold. Your hunters can circle this valley until they age to dust. They'll never find the entrance." "Why should we trust you?" Kieran's hand rested on a knife Alara hadn't noticed him take from the cave. "Because, young king, I knew your grandmother. I taught her the first song she ever sang. And I've been waiting 30 years for her prophecy to manifest." Thorn's smile turned sad. "She saw you. You know, in a vision 3 days before she died. Said her grandson would one day fall in the snow, broken and bleeding, and a ghost girl would sing him back from the edge of death. She made me promise to wait, to guide you both when the time came." Alara felt tears burn her eyes. "She saw me? Clear as starlight. Said you'd be the one everyone forgot, the one who existed in the spaces between, but that you'd remember the song when it mattered most." Thorn extended her hand. "Welcome home, Pathfinder. You've been lost for a very long time." The bond pulled tight. Alara looked at Kieran and found his eyes already on her, questioning. She nodded. They had no choice but to trust, or at least, no better option. Thorn led them deeper into the ruins. What appeared broken from outside revealed itself as camouflage. Beneath fallen stones lay intact chambers. Firelight glowed from hidden doorways. The scent of burning sage and pine filled air. The temple goes down 3 levels, Thorn explained, built into the hillside so deep that even earthquakes can't shake it loose. You'll have food, shelter, and time. Time to heal. Time to learn. Time to decide what comes next. She brought them to a circular room carved from living rock. Furs covered the floor. A fire burned in a pit that had no chimney, yet produced no smoke. Against one wall stood a basin of water that steamed despite the cold. Rest here tonight. Tomorrow, we begin your training. Training for what? Kirin asked. For what you already know you must do. Take back your throne, but not as the king you were, as the king you're meant to become. Thorn looked between them. The bond forming between you isn't coincidence. Pathfinders and Alpha Kings were always paired by the goddess. She doesn't waste miracles on those who won't use them. I don't want to use her, Kirin said sharply. She's not a weapon. No, she's a mirror. Thorn touched Alara's cheek gently. She'll reflect everything you are, everything you've done, and everything you could become. Can you face that, Alpha King? Can you look at your mistakes without flinching? I've done nothing but face them since my brother's blade opened my side. Then you're ready. Thorn moved toward the doorway. One more thing. Your hunters won't find you, but they won't leave either. They'll camp at the valley entrance and wait. Time moves strangely here. What feels like days to you may be weeks outside. Use it wisely. She left them in firelight and silence. Alara sat on the furs, suddenly exhausted. Kirin joined her, maintaining respectful distance that somehow felt wrong. The bond hummed between them, wanting connection. I'm sorry, he said finally, that you're caught in this. I'm not caught. I chose. Why? She turned to face him fully. Because when you looked at me in that cave, I stopped being invisible. Because your heartbeat feels like it belongs to me now. Because... She hesitated. Because the goddess showed your grandmother my face, and I want to know why. Kirin reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers traced the line of her jaw, reverent and careful. I was a king who believed power meant strength, he whispered. That mercy was weakness. That love had no place in leadership. Then I lay dying in snow, and a ghost girl sang me a song that made me remember everything I'd forgotten, everything I was supposed to be. And what's that? Human, fallible, capable of being saved. The fire crackled. Outside, wind howled through the valley, and somewhere in the distance, wolves circled, hunting for a king who had already found his sanctuary in the most unexpected place. She leaned forward. He met her halfway. Their foreheads touched, and the bond ignited like stars being born. Tomorrow would bring training, answers, and difficult truths. Tonight, they simply breathed in rhythm, 2 broken pieces discovering they fit. Morning arrived differently in the temple. No gradual dawn, no birdsong, just sudden awareness of light filtering through crystal formations embedded in stone walls. Alara woke to find Kirin already gone, the furs beside her still warm. She found him in a deeper chamber, stripped to the waist, moving through combat forms with deadly precision. Each strike cut air with audible force. His scars caught the strange underground light, turning them silver. You heal fast, she said from the doorway. He completed the sequence before answering. Alpha blood. We recover quicker than regular wolves, though what you did. He touched his ribs. That was something else. The wounds should have taken weeks. They closed in a night. I told you, I don't control it. Maybe that's the point. Control implies force. What you do feels like. He searched for words, like remembering something the body knew before the mind forgot. Thorn's voice echoed from behind Alara. Exactly right, young king. Now come, both of you. Your education begins. She led them to a chamber Ilara hadn't seen the night before. The walls were covered floor to ceiling in carvings. Not decorative, informational. A massive genealogy tree stretched across stone, branching and dividing and reconnecting in patterns that hurt to follow. The bloodlines, Thorn said, running her hand across names. Every Alpha King for 3,000 years. And here, she pointed to a separate branch, every Pathfinder who served them. Ilara stepped closer. The Pathfinder names were all female. Beside each was carved a symbol, moon phases, stars, particular flowers or animals. We weren't mates, Thorn explained. The mate bond is different. Fierce, possessive, often destructive. Pathfinders were mirrors and guides. Companions of the soul rather than the flesh, though some pairs. She smiled knowingly. Some chose both roles. What happened to them? Kieran studied the wall. Why did the gift stop? Pride, fear, the usual poisons. Thorn's expression darkened. 500 years ago, an Alpha King decided Pathfinders held too much influence. He killed his, then systematically hunted down the others. 13 women murdered in a single year. The goddess was displeased. She cursed the bloodline, Ilara whispered. Yes, no more Pathfinders would be born, not until an Alpha King proved himself worthy by falling completely, by losing everything through his own mistakes, by facing death with humility instead of rage. Thorn looked at Kieran. Your grandmother told me you'd be the one. She saw you broken in snow, and she knew the curse would finally lift. I'm not worthy of anything, Kieran said bitterly. I let my brother poison my pack. I chose mercy when I should have chosen justice. I failed everyone who trusted me. Yes, Thorn agreed, and that failure is precisely what makes you ready. The king who murdered the Pathfinders never failed at anything. He believed himself infallible. He couldn't imagine a world where he was wrong. She moved to another section of wall. Power without humility is tyranny. Strength without compassion is cruelty. You've learned this. Now you must teach it. Teach who? Your pack. The wolves who still believe in you. The ones Marcus is systematically destroying in your absence. Kieran's hands clenched. How do you know what he's doing? The ravens talk, the wind carries stories, and sometimes... Thorn touched the wall and whispered something in the old language. The stone rippled like water, then cleared. An image formed, hazy but recognizable. A great hall. Wolves gathered in submission. And at the center, sitting on a throne that wasn't his, Marcus. He looked nothing like Kieran. Where the true king was dark and controlled, Marcus was fair and wild. Scars covered his arms, self-inflicted, territorial. His eyes held the manic gleam of someone who'd tasted power and discovered he'd do anything to keep it. He's declared you dead, Thorn said. Held a funeral pyre 3 days ago. Most of the pack believes it. But some don't, Ilara said softly. She pointed to wolves standing at the hall's edges. Their postures were wrong, too stiff, too careful. Those 3, they're not true believers. Very good. Thorn looked impressed. You're learning to read what isn't said. A critical skill for Pathfinders. The image shifted. A dungeon. Wolves in chains. Ilara recognized the marks of silver burning their skin, punishment reserved for the worst traitors. Your general, Thorn said, the one Marcus turned. When he realized you'd escaped, he changed his story, said he was coerced. Marcus didn't believe him. Kieran's face went white. Dante, we grew up together. I trusted him with my life. And he betrayed that trust. But not completely. He's been feeding information to your loyalists, the ones who pretend to serve Marcus while waiting for your return. Thorn touched the wall again, and the image vanished. You have a week, maybe 2. Then Marcus consolidates power completely. He'll challenge the neighboring packs, start a territorial war. Thousands will die. Then we leave now. Kieran turned toward the exit. And do what? Thorn blocked his path, despite being half his size. Rush in and die heroically? Marcus has 150 loyal wolves. You have 2, one of whom is untrained and doesn't know how to use her gift. Then teach me, Alara said. Teach me whatever I need to know. It takes years to properly train a pathfinder. We don't have years. Teach me enough. Teach me what matters. Thorn studied her, then Kieran, then the bond that was now visible as a faint silver thread connecting them heart to heart. Very well. But understand, shortcuts have prices. The song you sang was instinctive, pulled from crisis. To wield it with intention requires opening yourself completely. Every fear, every wound, every secret shame. You'll have to face it all. No walls, no protection. I've been invisible my whole life, Alara said. I have nothing left to hide. Everyone has something to hide, especially from themselves. The training began immediately. Thorn took them to the deepest chamber, a cavern so vast the walls vanished into darkness. Water dripped from unseen heights, creating echoes that transformed into harmonies. The temple was built to amplify Pathfinder songs, Thorn explained. Down here, your voice will reach into the oldest parts of wolf consciousness. You'll be able to call their beasts forward or soothe them to sleep, heal wounds that aren't physical, show them truths they've been hiding from. And Kieran? Alara asked. What does he learn? To listen, to receive, to accept that his strength lies not in controlling everything, but in trusting the right people with pieces of his power. Thorn smiled grimly. Harder than it sounds for an alpha king. They spent the day in brutal honesty. Thorn forced Kieran to speak every failure aloud while Alara listened. Every mistake, every moment of pride, every time he chose ego over wisdom. His voice cracked multiple times. He wept once, silently, when describing the moment he realized Dante had betrayed him. Alara held the bond steady, absorbing his pain without judgment. When her turn came, she spoke of invisibility, of watching her mother forget her face, of the day her father mated another Omega because he couldn't recognize his own daughter anymore, of exile feeling like relief because at least in isolation, absence made sense. By nightfall, they were both wrung out, raw, trembling. Thorn brought them food neither wanted and made them eat anyway. Tomorrow, she said, we begin the actual work. Tonight, rest. Hold each other if you need to. The bond is strong enough now to share more than feelings. Share warmth, share presence, share the knowledge that you're not alone. She left them in the chamber. Neither moved for a long time. Finally, Kieran spoke. I heard every word you said. I felt every moment you described. And I want you to know, I see you. Completely. Nothing about you is invisible to me. Alara looked up. His amber eyes held firelight and fierce certainty. You see me too, he continued. You know my failures and you haven't walked away. I don't have words for what that is. She crossed the space between them and took his hand. The bond flared bright enough to illuminate the entire cavern for 3 heartbeats. We're going to save your pack, she said, and then we're going to teach them a better way. How can you be sure? Because the goddess doesn't waste miracles, and we're her miracle, the king who fell and the ghost who caught him. They slept beside each other that night, close enough to touch, but careful not to cross unspoken lines. The bond wove tighter, silver threads multiplying until they resembled a net that could catch anything, even falling kingdoms. Outside, in the world above, Marcus sat on a stolen throne and dreamed of war. Inside the temple, 2 souls learned to harmonize, and the goddess watched, waiting to see if her gamble would pay off. The gift revealed itself violently. 3 days into training, Alara stood in the resonance chamber with Kieran across from her. Thorn had instructed them to synchronize breathing, nothing more, simple foundation work. Then the vision hit. Alara's sight doubled, tripled, shattered into fragments. She saw Kieran as he was, standing before her, concerned. Kieran as he'd been, a boy watching his father die, too young to carry a crown. Kieran as he could be, standing over Marcus's corpse with blood on his hands and emptiness in his eyes. "No," she gasped, stumbling. But the visions didn't stop. They multiplied, branching into futures and pasts and presents, all layered impossibly over each other. She saw herself singing in the throne room while wolves bowed. Saw herself dead in snow, throat torn, Kieran howling over her body. Saw a child with amber eyes and her features running through summer grass. The possibilities were infinite, the weight of them unbearable. She collapsed. Kieran caught her before she hit stone. "Thorn, something's wrong!" The old woman appeared instantly, pressing her hand to Alara's forehead. "Nothing wrong, everything right, and too fast." She skipped 6 months of gradual awakening. She looked at Kieran. Your bond accelerated her gift. She's seeing too much, all at once. "Make it stop," Alara pleaded. The visions were drowning her, pulling her consciousness in 1,000 directions simultaneously. "I can't. Only you can. You have to choose." "Choose what?" "Which path to follow. The gift shows possibilities, not certainties. Pick the thread that feels true and let the others fade." But they all felt true. Every future, every past, every version of events that might have been or could still be. How could she choose when choice itself split into infinite branches? Then Kieran's voice cut through the chaos. "Listen to my heartbeat. Follow it back." She focused on the bond. His pulse was steady, grounding. Real in a way the visions weren't. She followed it like rope thrown to someone drowning, pulling herself hand over hand back to the present. The visions didn't disappear, but they quieted, became background music instead of deafening symphony. She opened her eyes. Kieran's face hovered inches from hers, stark with fear. "I'm okay," she whispered. "You stopped breathing for a full minute. I was. Somewhere else. Everywhere else." Thorn helped her sit up. The sight. Most pathfinders develop it gradually, learning to control which threads they follow. You've been thrown into the deep end. She studied Alara critically. "Can you function, or do you need time to adjust?" "I can function." Alara pushed to her feet, swaying only slightly. "Show me how to control it." What followed were the hardest hours of her life. Thorn taught her to sort visions by emotional resonance, futures that felt true versus those that felt like warnings or possibilities too distant to matter. She learned to ground herself in present sensations. Kieran's heartbeat through the bond, cold stone beneath her feet, sound of dripping water. By evening, she could look at Kieran without seeing a dozen versions of him simultaneously. Progress. "Now," Thorn said, "use it purposefully. Look at the king and tell me what you see." Alara opened herself to the sight, careful and controlled this time. The visions came softer, like rain instead of flood. "He's afraid," she said slowly, "not of Marcus, of himself. He's terrified he'll become the kind of king who kills his brother, even if it's necessary. He'd rather die than compromise his mercy." Kieran's face showed nothing, but she felt truth through the bond. "Deeper," Thorn commanded. "What drives the fear?" Alara looked longer, past surface emotion into the caverns beneath. His father told him mercy was the highest form of strength. But his father died because he showed mercy to the wrong wolf, a rival alpha who pretended to submit, then attacked during a peace feast. Kieran watched his father bleed out, heard him say with his last breath, "Never become hard. Promise me." She pulled back from the vision, shaken. He's kept that promise, even when it cost him everything. Silence filled the chamber. Kieran turned away, hands clenched. My father was wrong. Mercy without wisdom is just martyrdom dressed up as virtue. No, Ilara said softly. Your father was right about mercy being strength. He was just wrong about when to use it. You can be merciful and still protect your pack. The two aren't opposites. Tell that to the wolves Marcus is torturing because they waited for my return. I will, when we free them. He spun back. How? Even with your gift, we're 2 against an army. Not 2. Thorn moved to the chamber wall and placed both palms against stone. The rock rippled, cleared. This time the image showed wolves scattered through forests, small groups, hidden camps, individuals moving with purpose through darkness. You're loyalists, Thorn said. They've been organizing in secret, waiting for a sign that their king lives. There are 43 of them. Not enough to challenge Marcus openly, but enough to create chaos if coordinated correctly. How do we reach them? Kieran stepped closer to the image. Marcus has doubled patrols. Anyone caught in the forest is executed. You don't reach them. She does. Thorn looked at Ilara. A Pathfinder's song can carry on wind and moonlight. You can sing to them from here, call them to a gathering point, give them hope. I've never done anything like that. You've never tried. Time to learn. The next hours blurred into repetition and failure. Ilara sang the old songs, trying to project her voice beyond the temple, beyond the valley. Nothing worked. The cavern amplified sound beautifully, but couldn't make it travel distances. Kieran watched, patient and encouraging. When she wanted to quit, he reminded her what was at stake. When she pushed too hard, he made her rest. Finally, as midnight approached, Thorn intervened. You're singing to the world. You need to sing to specific souls. Think of the wolves you saw in the vision. Imagine their heartbeats. Let the bond teach you. The bond connects me to Kieran, not them. But Kieran is connected to them. Alpha blood creates threads between king and pack. Use him as a conduit. Ilara looked at Kieran. That would require complete trust, he finished. Full access to everything I am. You'd be using my memories, my connections, my bond with the pack as a bridge. It could hurt. Then it hurts. Do it. She stepped close, placing one hand over his heart. The other she raised toward the cavern ceiling, fingers spread like she could catch moonlight that wasn't there. Give me permission, she whispered. You have it. All of me. Whatever you need. The bond opened like a flower, not just between them, through them. She felt Kieran's connection to every wolf in his pack, living threads of loyalty and love and shared history. Some threads were strong, bright as steel cables. Others were frayed, damaged by Marcus's betrayal. But they were all there. Ilara chose the strongest threads and began to sing. This time she didn't sing words. She sang memory. Kieran's memory of each wolf, moments of laughter, shared battles, quiet conversations. She sang recognition, calling each soul by its true name. And beneath it all, she sang a promise. He lives. He remembers you. Come home. The song built, resonating through the cavern, through the bond, through the invisible threads connecting king to pack. It poured out of her like light through breaking clouds, relentless and inevitable. When the last note faded, she collapsed. Kieran caught her, lowering them both to the floor. Did it work? She managed. Thorn was crying. Look. She pointed to the wall. The image showed wolves throughout the forest, lifting their heads simultaneously, eyes widening with recognition. Some fell to their knees. Others howled, not in grief, but in joy. The song had reached them. They're coming, Thorn said. 3 nights from now, they'll gather at the old oak grove on the border. That's where you'll meet them. 3 nights, Kieran repeated. He looked exhausted, but alive in a way he hadn't been since arriving. "Can we be ready?" "You're already ready. You've been ready since you let yourself fall." Thorn's smile was fierce. "Now you get to rise, and this time, you won't rise alone." Alara leaned against Kieran, too tired to sit upright. Through the bond, she felt his gratitude, his hope, his lingering fear. She sent back her own certainty, steady as stone. They had 3 days to prepare for war. 3 days to transform a broken king and a ghost girl into something Marcus couldn't anticipate. 3 days until mercy and justice finally learned to dance. The oak grove appeared unchanged, ancient trees holding their positions like sentinels grown from earth rather than planted. But Kieran could sense the difference. Wolves hidden in shadows, hearts beating in careful rhythm, 43 souls holding their breath, waiting. He stepped into the clearing first. Alone, as was proper. Alpha kings didn't hide behind others, even when others had saved them. Moonlight caught him in silver. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moved. Then a wolf stepped forward from the trees, massive, gray-coated, one eye clouded with old injury. He shifted mid-stride, becoming a man Kieran knew better than his own reflection. "Ronan," Kieran said, voice rough with emotion. "My king." The older man dropped to one knee. "We thought you were dead. We held funeral rites. His voice broke. "Forgive us. We should have searched longer." "There's nothing to forgive. I fell far from the Packlands. You couldn't have found me." Kieran moved forward, gripping Ronan's shoulder. "Rise, all of you, rise." More wolves emerged. Some Kieran recognized instantly, members of his personal guard, childhood friends, wolves who'd served his father. Others were younger, faces he knew only distantly, but all wore the same expression, hope mixed with disbelief. "It's really you," a young female said. "The song. We heard the Pathfinder's song. We thought it was a dream." "Not a dream." Kieran gestured toward the trees where Alara stood with Thorn. "Come, meet the one who saved your king." Alara stepped into moonlight. The assembled wolves went silent, staring. She had no scent. To them, she would register as empty space wearing flesh. "A ghost," someone whispered. "A pathfinder," Kieran corrected firmly. "Blessed by the goddess, sent to guide us through what comes next." He felt Alara's nervousness through the bond, sent her steadiness in return. She walked forward with her head high, stopping beside him. "I'm Alara," she said simply. "I don't expect you to understand what I am. I barely understand it myself. But I can promise you this. Your king lives because I chose mercy, and I'll keep choosing it for all of you until this pack is whole again." Ronan studied her intently. Then, slowly, he bowed. "If our king trusts you, that's enough." Others followed his lead. Not all. Some wolves looked skeptical, uncertain. But enough. It was enough. "Tell me everything," Kieran said. "What's happened since I fell?" They gathered in a circle, and the story emerged in pieces. Marcus had claimed Kieran fled after realizing his weakness. Said the true king had abandoned his pack in their time of need. He'd executed 3 wolves who challenged the narrative and imprisoned a dozen more. "Dante's still alive," Ronan said quietly. "Barely. Marcus keeps him in silver chains, brings him out during gatherings to prove what happens to traitors." "He's not a traitor," Kieran said. "Not completely. Thorn showed me. He's been passing information to loyalists." "At great cost." Ronan's jaw tightened. "Marcus flays him regularly, makes the pack watch." Alara felt Kieran's fury spike through the bond. She touched his arm gently, grounding him. "Marcus is planning something," a younger wolf said. "He's been meeting with the Eastern Ridge Pack. They've been rivals for decades, but suddenly they're allies." "Not allies," Thorn interjected. "Marcus promised them territory if they help crush any resistance to his rule. He's preparing for civil war." Then we don't have time for gradual rebellion. Kieran's voice carried absolute authority. We challenge him directly. During the next full moon gathering, 3 days from now, the entire pack will be assembled. We present evidence of his crimes and call for a true alpha challenge. He has 150 wolves, Ronan said. We have 43. Numbers aren't everything. Kieran looked at Alara. Show them. She understood. Opening herself to the sight, she looked at each wolf individually. Past their surface, fears to the truth beneath. You, she said, pointing to a young male. You're Marcus's third cousin. You pretended loyalty, but you've been documenting his orders, keeping records. The wolf startled. How did you— And you, Alara indicated a scarred female. You lead a hunting party that Marcus trusts. But half your hunters are actually loyalists. One by one, she revealed hidden truths. Wolves gasped as secrets they'd guarded carefully were laid bare. But Alara didn't speak accusations. She spoke recognitions, acknowledged their courage, honored their patience. When she finished, the entire group looked at her with something approaching awe. The Pathfinder can see truth, Kieran said, which means she'll be able to prove Marcus's crimes in front of the pack. He won't be able to lie his way out. He'll kill her before she speaks, someone said. He'll try. Kieran's smile was sharp. But she won't be alone, and neither will I. They spent the next hour planning. Ronan's hunters would create diversions to draw off Marcus's most loyal guards. The young cousin would present his documentation during the gathering, creating confusion. And at the critical moment, Kieran would step into the circle and issue his challenge. What about the Eastern Ridge wolves? Ronan asked. If they interfere, they won't. Thorn spoke with certainty. Alpha law is sacred. Once a formal challenge is issued, outsiders cannot interfere. Marcus will face Kieran alone. He'll fight to kill, Ronan said grimly. No mercy, no honor. I know. Kieran met each wolf's eyes in turn. And that's why I'll win. Because I've learned something Marcus never understood. Mercy isn't weakness. It's the hardest form of strength. And strength rooted in compassion is unbreakable. Ilara felt truth resonate through the bond. He believed what he said. More than that, he'd become it. The gathering dispersed slowly. Wolves melted back into shadows, moving toward their hidden camps. Ronan lingered, studying Kieran with concern. You're different, he said finally. The king who left was righteous but rigid. You're softer now, but somehow more dangerous. I died, Kieran said simply, and someone taught me how to live differently. Ronan looked at Alara. Protect him. Whatever happens at that gathering, keep him alive. I will, she promised, or die trying. That's what I'm afraid of. Ronan clasped Kieran's forearm. 3 days, my king. We'll be ready. He shifted and vanished into trees. Thorn, Kieran, and Alara stood alone in the clearing. The moon hung huge and silver, 4 days from full. Can you do it? Thorn asked Kieran. Kill your brother if it comes to that? I don't know, he admitted, but I know I can't let him keep destroying the pack. If mercy means protecting the many by stopping the one. He exhaled slowly. Then I'll bear that weight. Good answer. Thorn turned to Alara. And you. Can you watch him fight without interfering? Can you hold the space for him to make his own choices? I don't know either, Ilara said honestly, but I'll try. Trying is all the goddess asks. Thorn smiled sadly. Now come, back to the temple. You both need rest before the full moon. What happens in 3 days will determine the future of every wolf in these territories. They walked through forest in silence, the bond humming between them like a song not yet finished. Behind them, in a fortress of stone and fear, Marcus sat on his stolen throne and felt the first tremor of unease crawl up his spine. He told himself it was nothing. He was wrong. Subscribe if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen. The full moon rose red. Alara stood at the temple entrance, watching the sky bleed crimson into silver. Is that normal? No. Thorn's expression was grim. Blood moon. The goddess is paying attention. When the celestial and the mortal align this way, outcomes become inevitable. Whatever happens tonight cannot be undone. Kieran emerged from the temple, dressed in clothing Thorn had kept preserved for decades. His grandfather's ceremonial armor. Dark leather reinforced with silver plates, light enough for speed, but strong enough to deflect claws. He looked every inch the Alpha King, except for his eyes. Those carried something Marcus would never possess. Earned humility. "How do I look?" he asked, attempting lightness. "Like someone who's already won," Alara said. Through the bond, she felt his fear wrapped in determination. And someone who's terrified of what winning might cost. Both accurate. He adjusted the armor straps. "If I fall tonight, you won't. But if I do, promise me you'll lead the loyalists. Use the sight to guide them. They'll follow you." "I promise. But you're going to walk out of that circle. I've seen it." "The sight showed you?" "No. My heart did. And right now, I trust that more." Thorn handed Kieran a silver knife, ceremonial but deadly. "Your grandfather used this in his final challenge. He won. The blade carries that victory in its metal. And if I have to use it? Then you use it knowing the goddess blessed the choice before you made it. Some violence protects life. Tonight's might be that kind." They left the temple as the blood moon climbed higher. The forest felt alive with anticipation. Every shadow deeper, every sound amplified. Other wolves were moving through trees, all heading toward the same destination. The gathering grounds sat in a natural amphitheater carved from stone by ancient rivers. Tiers of rock created viewing areas where hundreds of wolves could witness what happened in the central circle. Already the space was filling. Alara smelled tension sharp as copper. Marcus stood at the circle's edge, surrounded by his most loyal guards. He'd changed since Kieran last saw him, put on muscle, added fresh scars across his arms in display patterns. But his eyes held the same manic gleam. He wore their father's crown, crude silver twisted into a circlet. He saw Kieran and went absolutely still. The entire gathering fell silent, 500 wolves holding their breath. Kieran walked forward alone. Each step echoed off stone. He stopped at the circle's boundary, 10 feet from his brother. "Hello, Marcus." "Ghost." Marcus's voice cracked. "They burned your body. I watched it turn to ash. You burned someone's body, not mine." Kieran stepped into the circle. "I challenge your claim to rule. I challenge your right to the crown. I challenge you for leadership of this pack and all territories under its protection." The formal words rang out. By ancient law, Marcus had to accept or abdicate. No middle ground. Marcus laughed, high, desperate. "You're weak. That's why you fell. That's why I rose. The pack doesn't need mercy. It needs strength." "Then prove your strength. Face me, or admit you stole what you couldn't earn." Marcus's hand went to the knife at his belt. Around the circle, his guards tensed. But they couldn't interfere. Alpha law prevented it. This fight belonged to the challengers alone. "I accept." Marcus stripped off his shirt, revealing the full extent of his self-inflicted scars. "And when I kill you this time, I'll make sure you stay dead." Ronan stepped forward as witness. "Alpha challenge accepted. Goddess bear witness. No interference. Fight until submission or death. Begin when the moon touches the mountain peak." Everyone looked up. The blood moon climbed toward the horizon's edge. 30 seconds. 20. Alara found her place at the circle's edge. Through the bond, she sent Kieran everything she had: courage, faith, love she hadn't yet named aloud. He glanced at her once, and in that look she saw his soul laid bare. Then the moon touched stone. Marcus attacked instantly, shifting mid-leap into his wolf form, a massive beast, pale as bone, teeth bared. He went for Kieran's throat. No hesitation, no honor. Kieran shifted to meet him. His wolf was darker, larger. But Marcus had surprise. They collided with impact that shook the ground. Blood sprayed. Wolves snarled. The fight was brutal, primal. Marcus fought with desperation of someone who knew he'd never get another chance. Kieran fought with precision, born from grief and necessity. They tore at each other, rolled through dirt, crashed against stone. Elara felt every wound through the bond. When Marcus's fangs tore Kieran's shoulder, she gasped. When Kieran's claws opened Marcus's side, she tasted copper. But she held still. This was Kieran's choice, his redemption. She couldn't interfere. The fight lasted minutes but felt like hours. Both wolves were bleeding, tiring. Marcus's movements grew wilder, less controlled. Kieran's grew more focused, more deliberate. Finally, Kieran found his opening. Marcus overextended on a lunge, left his throat exposed for a heartbeat. Kieran took it, jaws closing on windpipe, pressure increasing. Marcus struggled, thrashing, but Kieran held firm. The crowd watched in absolute silence as the false king weakened. Then Marcus shifted back to human form, the wolf's survival instinct overridden by the man's pride. He looked up at Kieran with eyes that held sudden clarity. "Do it," he rasped. "Kill me, like I deserve." Kieran shifted back, still pinning his brother. Blood covered them both. The silver knife lay 3 feet away, within reach. Everyone waited. Through the bond, Elara felt Kieran's agony. Every reason to kill Marcus was valid. Every reason to show mercy felt like weakness. But she also felt him remember his father's dying words, the promise he'd made, the king he wanted to be. Kieran released Marcus's throat and sat back. "No." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "You challenged me," Kieran said, voice carrying to every witness. "You poisoned my guards, stole my crown, tortured my loyalists. You earned death 100 times over. Then give it to me." "No, because I'm not the king you thought I was. I'm not the king our father was. I'm something new, something that understands mercy and justice aren't opposites." Kieran stood, offering his hand. "You're exiled, permanently. Take 3 days to leave our territory. If you ever return, I'll kill you without hesitation. But tonight, you live, because killing you would make me the monster you wanted me to be." Marcus stared at the offered hand. Then he laughed, broken, bitter. "You're a fool. Mercy is weakness. This pack will never respect you." "Then let them choose." Kieran turned to face the assembled wolves. "I am Kieran, son of Julian, grandson of Marcus the Wise. I fell because I trusted the wrong wolf. I survived because I learned to accept help. I return not as the king I was, but as the king you need. One who understands strength without compassion is tyranny, and compassion without strength is abdication." He gestured to Elara. She stepped into the circle, feeling 500 pairs of eyes on her. "This is Elara, Pathfinder, blessed by the goddess. The gift we thought lost has returned, and it returned to save a king who needed saving." Kieran's voice rang clear. "I ask you to accept not just my leadership, but the truth that leadership requires counsel, requires perspective beyond our own, requires mercy." Silence stretched. Then Ronan stepped forward and dropped to one knee. "My king, my loyalty, always." One by one, wolves followed. Some immediately, some hesitantly. But they followed. Even some of Marcus's former guards bent knee, recognizing the truth. Marcus watched his power dissolve. Then he stood, spat blood, and walked toward the circle's edge. Guards parted for him. He paused once, looking back. "You'll regret this," he said. "Mercy always costs more than killing." "Maybe," Kieran agreed. "But I can live with that cost." Can you live with what you've become? Marcus had no answer. He shifted and ran into darkness, leaving behind the crown he'd stolen. Kieran picked up the silver circlet. He didn't put it on. Instead, he held it up so everyone could see. I don't want to be the kind of king who rules through fear. I want to be the kind who rules through trust. So I make this vow. Any wolf who challenges me honorably will be heard. Any injustice brought to light will be addressed. And any mercy I show will be mercy earned, not weakness displayed. He finally placed the crown on his head. It sat differently than before, lighter somehow, despite being the same weight. We have work to do, loyalists to heal, traitors to judge fairly, alliances to rebuild. And through it all, we'll be guided by wisdom, strength, and mercy in equal measure. The assembled pack howled, not in submission, but in agreement. The sound rose to the blood moon and echoed off mountains. Ilara felt tears stream down her face. Through the bond she felt Kieran's relief, his exhaustion, his hope. She sent him her pride, her certainty that he'd made the right choice. When the howling quieted, he crossed to her. In front of everyone, he took her hand. None of this happens without you, he said softly. You saved me, guided me, showed me who I could become. I don't know what comes next, but I know I want you beside me for all of it. Always, she promised. The crowd dispersed slowly. Wolves approached their returned king with questions, concerns, relief. Ronan brought news of Dante's location, still imprisoned but alive. Kieran ordered his immediate release and medical care. Thorn appeared at Ilara's elbow. Well done, Pathfinder. The goddess is pleased. I can feel it in the air. She's lifting her gaze, satisfied that Mercy has finally learned to dance with justice. What happens now? Now. You both learn to rule together. You guide, he leads. And the pack benefits from both. Thorn smiled, though I suspect there's more to your story than political alliance. Ilara looked at Kieran, who was surrounded by wolves but kept glancing her direction. The bond pulsed steady and strong between them. Maybe, she admitted, but we have time to figure that out. Yes, time. The one thing you've both finally earned. The blood moon began to fade, returning to silver, and in the gathering grounds, a king who'd learned to fall began teaching his pack how to rise. Dawn came gentle after the blood moon's fury. Ilara woke in chambers she barely remembered entering. Rooms carved high in the fortress that had once imprisoned Kieran and now welcomed him home. Sunlight streamed through windows overlooking forests that stretched to horizons. She found Kieran on the balcony, already dressed, staring toward the eastern border where Marcus had vanished. Regretting Mercy? She asked quietly. No, mourning it. He didn't turn. I saved his life but lost my brother. There's grief in that. She joined him at the railing. Below, the pack moved through morning routines, cooking fires, smoking, children playing, wolves training. Everything looked normal, but she could feel the tension underneath. A pack in transition, uncertain of its new direction. They're watching you, she observed, waiting to see if you meant what you said. I know, which is why today we start proving it. He finally looked at her. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, but they held clarity. Dante first, then the imprisoned loyalists. Then we address everyone Marcus hurt or manipulated. We rebuild trust, one wolf at a time. That could take years. Then it takes years. I'm not interested in fast solutions anymore. I want real ones. They descended to the dungeons together. The smell hit first, blood, silver, despair. Kieran's jaw tightened, but he didn't falter. Dante hung from chains in the deepest cell, barely conscious, his body a map of torture. Cut him down, Kieran ordered the guards. Gently, get healers, now. As wolves rushed to obey, Kieran knelt beside his former general. Dante, can you hear me? Eyes cracked open. Recognition sparked, followed by disbelief. My king, They said you were dead. I got better. Kieran's attempt at lightness cracked. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I left you to this. Not your fault. I chose betrayal. Then I chose redemption. Both had prices. Dante coughed blood. Did you win? Yes, and you're free now. You'll heal, and when you're ready, we'll talk about what comes next. Marcus? Exiled, alive. I chose mercy. Dante laughed weakly. That's why you're the king, and I'm the fool who followed the wrong brother. Marcus would have killed you without hesitation. I know, but I'm not Marcus. Healers arrived with stretchers and supplies. As they worked on Dante, Kieran moved through the dungeon, releasing every imprisoned wolf personally. Some wept, some thanked him, some said nothing, too traumatized for words. Ilara watched her king become whole by healing others. Through the bond, she felt his pain transmute into purpose. This was who he was meant to be, not the warrior king who never fell, but the compassionate one who rose from falling. By midday, every prisoner was freed. Kieran called a general assembly in the Great Hall. Not a formal gathering, but an open forum. Wolves filed in cautiously, taking seats on benches that hadn't been used this way in months. Kieran stood before them without ceremony. No throne, no elevated platform. Just the king and his people. Level. I know you have questions, he began, and fears and anger. Some of you supported Marcus believing I'd abandoned you. Some remained loyal at great cost. All of you deserve truth. He spent 3 hours answering questions. Yes, he'd show mercy when possible, but justice when necessary. Yes, wolves who'd committed atrocities under Marcus would face consequences, but proportional ones, judged fairly. Yes, the Pathfinder would have official standing as royal counsel. No, he wouldn't pursue vengeance against those who'd simply survived under Marcus's rule. Through it all, Ilara sat beside him, occasionally using the sight to help discern truth from performance. Twice, she identified wolves who were still loyal to Marcus, feeding information to enemies. Kieran had them quietly marked for observation, not punishment. He wanted to understand their motivations before deciding their fate. When the assembly ended, Ronan approached with concern written across his scarred face. The Eastern Ridge Pack is requesting a meeting. They want to renegotiate the alliance Marcus promised them. Send word I'll meet their alpha at the border in 2 days. Neutral ground, limited escorts. That's dangerous. Marcus might have arranged a trap. Then we spring it carefully. But we have to start rebuilding relationships. Fear-based alliances die the moment fear lessens. That evening, Ilara found herself in the library, a circular room at the fortress's heart, filled with books and scrolls documenting pack history. She traced her fingers across spines, reading titles in languages she shouldn't understand, but somehow did. Thorn appeared like smoke, settling into a chair by the fire. You're adjusting well, the old woman observed. I don't feel adjusted. I feel like I'm pretending to be someone who knows what she's doing. That's called leadership. Everyone feels that way. The difference is whether you pretend through paralysis or action. You're choosing action. What happens when the sight shows me something terrible? A future I can't prevent? You remember that the sight shows possibilities, not certainties. The future is written in water, not stone. It changes based on choices made in each moment. Thorn leaned forward. But yes, sometimes you'll see tragedies coming. Sometimes you'll be unable to stop them. That's when you hold space for grief without letting it paralyze you. Did you ever see something you couldn't change? Thorn's expression turned distant. I saw the Alpha King who killed the Pathfinders make his choice days before he acted. I warned my sisters. Most didn't believe me. Those who did couldn't run far enough fast. Her voice carried centuries of sorrow. I survived by sacrificing my wolf. Became human enough that he didn't recognize me as threat. Watched him burn women I loved. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be better. That's why the goddess brought you and Kieran together, to break cycles, not perpetuate them. Kieran entered the library, looking exhausted. Am I interrupting? No, Thorne said, rising. I was just leaving. You two need time together without ancient women dispensing wisdom. She vanished into shadows, leaving them alone with firelight and old books. Kieran sat beside Alara, close enough that their shoulders touched. The bond hummed contentment. Long day, he said. You were magnificent. I was terrified. Every decision felt wrong and right simultaneously. That's because they were both. Leadership isn't about perfect choices. It's about making imperfect ones and living with consequences. He took her hand, threading their fingers together. I keep thinking about what Ronan said, that I'm different now, softer but more dangerous. You're more whole. You were brittle before, strong but inflexible. Now you bend instead of breaking. Because of you. Because of falling, I just happened to catch you. He turned to face her fully. I need to say something, and I need you to hear it without the bond influencing your reaction. Alara's heart quickened. Okay. I don't know if what we have is the mate bond or the pathfinder bond or something else entirely. I don't care about the label. What I know is that I look at you and see home. I hear your voice and find peace. I feel your presence and remember why I wanted to be king in the first place, not for power, but to protect people worth protecting. He paused. I'm not asking you to be my mate or my queen or anything with a title. I'm just asking. Can we figure out what this is together? Without rushing, without expectations, just together? Ilara felt tears sting. Yes, absolutely, yes. Because when I look at you, I don't see the Alpha King anymore. I see Kieran, the man who let himself fall so he could learn to rise differently. That's who I want beside me. Not the crown, not the power. Just you. He kissed her then, gentle, questioning, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. She leaned in, and the bond exploded with light that illuminated the entire library for 3 heartbeats. When they separated, both were breathless. That was... Kieran couldn't finish. Everything, Ilara completed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching fire dance. Outside, the pack settled into evening routines. Somewhere in the wilderness, Marcus ran alone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Eastern Ridge negotiation, justice proceedings, healing work. But tonight, in firelight and companionship, a king and a pathfinder simply existed. 2 souls learning that falling wasn't failure. It was the beginning of flight. 3 months later, winter released its grip on the northern territories. Snow melted into rivers. Green pushed through brown. The world remembered how to bloom. Ilara stood in the throne room, though they'd renamed it the council chamber. The throne itself had been replaced with a circular table where 12 wolves could gather as equals. Kieran had insisted. Kings who sat above their people, he'd said, lost sight of the ground. Today, that table held representatives from 5 neighboring packs. The Eastern Ridge wolves had come first, suspicious but curious. Then the Mountain Shadow Pack, followed by others who'd heard stories of the Alpha King who chose mercy and survived. The proposal is simple, Kieran explained, standing rather than sitting. He preferred movement to stillness these days. We share resources during harsh seasons. We mediate conflicts before they become wars. We establish safe passage through territories for those seeking sanctuary from abuse. And in return? The Eastern Ridge Alpha, an older female named Vera, studied him skeptically. What do you gain from generosity? Peace, stability, a future where we solve problems through conversation instead of bloodshed. Kieran gestured to Ilara. Our Pathfinder can verify truth. Any pack that tries to manipulate the Alliance will be exposed. Vera looked at Alara with open curiosity. They say you have no scent, that you're a ghost made flesh. I'm just someone the goddess blessed and cursed in equal measure, Alara said carefully. She'd learned that honesty worked better than mystery. But yes, I can sense truth. It's not infallible. I can be fooled by those who truly believe their own lies. But I try. Show me. Alara opened herself to the sight. Vera's present and past layered over each other. She saw an alpha who'd lost her mate young, who'd ruled alone for decades, who desperately wanted peace but feared appearing weak. You're not here because you believe in mercy, Alara said gently. You're here because you're tired. Tired of defending borders, tired of training warriors for conflicts that solve nothing, tired of watching young wolves die for pride. You want to believe there's another way, but you're terrified it's naive. Vera's eyes widened. Several wolves at the table shifted uncomfortably. So I'm a coward? Vera asked quietly. You're wise. Wisdom recognizes when old patterns stop working. Cowardice would be maintaining those patterns to avoid appearing weak. Silence held the chamber. Then Vera laughed, deep, genuine. I like her, and I like what you're proposing. But make no mistake, Kieran. The moment this alliance becomes a trap, I'll walk away. I'd expect nothing less. The meeting continued for hours. Boundaries were discussed, resources allocated, dispute resolution protocols established. By evening, a preliminary agreement existed, fragile as new ice, but present. As representatives departed, Ronan approached with news. Scouts reported movement on the western border, a lone wolf staying just outside our territory. Kieran tensed. Description? Pale coat, matches Marcus. Alara felt Kieran's immediate conflict through the bond. He hasn't crossed the boundary? No, just watching. Third time this week. Do nothing, Kieran decided. If he crosses, we respond. But watching isn't a threat. Maybe it's his way of processing exile. Or planning revenge. Maybe. But I made my choice. I can't change it without becoming someone I don't want to be. Later, in their private chambers, Alara found Kieran on the balcony again. He spent a lot of time there, watching horizons. You're worried about him, she said. Always. He's my brother. That doesn't stop just because he tried to kill me. What if he comes back? Then I handle it, probably the same way, mercy until it becomes impossible, then justice. He pulled her close. But I don't want to spend tonight worrying about tomorrow. Not when today was good. She leaned into him. Through the bond, she felt his contentment mixing with perpetual underlying concern. It was his nature, the protector who could never fully rest. The pack is healing, she observed. You're hearing fewer challenges to your rule. Because they're seeing results. Dante's recovery, the alliance forming, justice being applied fairly. He paused. And because you're beside me, they trust you, maybe more than they trust me. That's not true. It is, but I don't mind. Leaders who need to be the most trusted are usually the least trustworthy. Movement in the courtyard below caught their attention. A group of children playing, their laughter rising. Among them, some who'd been orphaned by Marcus's cruelty, now integrated into pack families. That, Kieran said softly, that's why we do this. Not for glory or power. For moments like that, children playing because they feel safe. Alara turned in his arms to face him. What do you want, Kieran? Not for the pack, not for the alliance, for yourself? He considered the question seriously. I want this. You, me, building something better than what we inherited. I want to wake up and choose mercy again each day, even when it's hard. I want. He smiled. I want to stop being the fallen king everyone talks about and just be the king who works. That's good, because I want the same thing. To be useful, not mystical, to guide without controlling. So, we agree. Quiet competence over dramatic heroism. Exactly, he kissed her forehead. Though I reserve the right to occasionally be dramatic, I am still an alpha king. And I reserve the right to roll my eyes when you are. They stood together as twilight descended. Below, the pack moved through evening routines, fires lit, food prepared, stories shared, life continuing in its small, essential ways. Thorn appeared in their doorway, leaning on her white staff. I'm leaving tomorrow. They both turned. What? Why? Alara asked. My work here is done. You've both found your footing. The pack accepts you. The alliance is forming. She smiled. And honestly, I'm tired. I've been guardian of that temple for longer than you've been alive. Time to rest. Where will you go? Kiran asked. Back to the temple, to the deep places where the goddess still whispers. Maybe I'll sleep for a few decades, see what the world looks like when I wake. You're not dying? Alara felt panic spike. Not yet, but eventually. That's what mortality means, endings that give meaning to middles. Thorn approached, taking both their hands. I'm proud of you, both of you. You took impossible circumstances and created something good. That's rarer than you know. She released them and turned to leave. Wait, Alara said. Will we see you again? Maybe, if you need me, but you won't need me. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You're ready. She left them standing in firelight, holding hands, facing an uncertain future with hard-won certainty that they could handle it. Weeks became months. The alliance strengthened. New protocols prevented conflicts before they erupted. Young wolves from different packs trained together, forming friendships that transcended territorial boundaries. Marcus was spotted occasionally, always at distance, always watching, never approaching. Some wolves wanted him hunted down. Kiran refused. He lives with his choices. That's punishment enough. Alara's reputation grew. Wolves traveled from distant territories seeking her counsel, her ability to see truth through deception. She helped resolve disputes, identify corruption, guide those struggling with grief or anger. Together, she and Kiran became something new, not just king and pathfinder, but partners reimagining what leadership could mean. One spring evening, as cherry blossoms fell like snow, Kiran took Alara to the place they'd first met. The forest clearing where he'd lain dying, where she'd sung him back to life. Why here? She asked. Because I want to remember, not just where we began, but who we were then, broken, alone, desperate. I never want to forget what falling feels like. He knelt on ground where his blood had once stained snow. She knelt beside him. I love you, he said simply. Not because fate or the goddess or prophecy decided it, but because you're brave and kind, and you see people as they are, not as you wish they were. Because you make me want to be better, without making me feel inadequate. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it means to be human before I remember what it means to be king. Alara felt tears stream freely. I love you too, because you fell and learned to rise. Because you chose mercy when vengeance would have been easier. Because you're building something beautiful from pieces of something broken. The bond between them pulsed, visible as silver threads in fading sunlight. I'm not asking you to be my mate, Kiran said carefully. I know the traditions, the expectations, but I'm asking, will you choose me? Every day, consciously, as many times as it takes. Yes, as long as you keep choosing me. Always. In every life, in every version of this story, I choose you. They stayed in that clearing until stars emerged, the same stars that had watched a king fall and a ghost girl catch him, the same moon that had blessed their improbable meeting. And somewhere, in deep places between worlds, the goddess smiled. Her gamble had paid off. Mercy had crowned the fallen, and in doing so, it had saved them all. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment, and subscribe. Because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.